What's up YouTube, Nick Seraphin here, and today I want to start off this video by apologizing for a lack of content recently. My computer was out of commission for a few weeks and I was unable to make any content during that time, but I'm finally back and ready to get into it. This video will be a little longer than previous ones as we are looking to investigate whether the Boston Uprising will be able to perform during Season 2. This offseason has been a tumultuous one for the Uprising, releasing 2 DPS players, Striker and Mistakes, their secondary support, Neko, as well as the players Kalios, Avast, and Snow. Considering Kalios, Avast, and Snow didn't get much playtime in Season 1, I don't believe that this will affect the team too negatively. While Kalios did get some playing time, I would argue that Note was clearly the better off-tank on the team, so I completely understood why they released these players and I think it was a good move. One of the more controversial things Boston did during the offseason was trade Neko to the Toronto Defiant. Neko had been reported on wanting to leave the team for some time now, so the trade makes sense, but it is slightly concerning for Uprising fans. Neko was a very good support player for the Boston Uprising and was often considered one of the best Zenyatas in the league. As someone who watched every game in Season 1, I noticed that Neko would often take strange routes and flank as Zenyatta rather than stick behind his tanks. While this style of play was abnormal for the league, it often worked out and created a lot of opportunity for the team. Kind of a high-risk, high-reward type deal. Now, AimGod, the player that is taking over Neko's position, is not necessarily a new player for Boston. He played a decent amount of games in Stage 4, but if you remember those games, they didn't always go very well. Now, keep in mind, at this time, AimGod was new to the team, and a new patch had just changed the meta completely. While the team struggled during this time, there are some advantages AimGod has over Neko. While Neko had built up a lot of synergy with the team, AimGod is still a very mechanically skilled player. Even when the Uprising was losing fights, AimGod would often find picks, but at the time it was too little too late. If you go and look at AimGod's stats compared to Neko during Season 1, he actually performed better on paper. Also, AimGod's English is very good in comparison to Neko, who did not speak very good English. This will improve communication across the board with the team as all of their players now speak fluent English. So the question remains, will AimGod be able to perform in place of Neko? Well, in my opinion, the team's underperformance with AimGod in Stage 4 was due to a lack of synergy with the new player and not enough practice time. I do think AimGod is a skilled player and I think he'll be a good support in Season 2. While we are on the topic of supports, it's worth mentioning that Boston now has 2 main supports signed. Kelix, the same main support from Season 1, and Alamo, a new player signed from Contender South America. Many people have often pointed to Kelix as one of the players on the team that hasn't performed very well, and while I don't think Kelix is one of the best supports in the league, I do think that he has a couple of positives. Kelix, like Neko, is a high-risk, high-reward type player, and because of this, he would often get picked off at unfortunate times throughout the game, but the upside to this is that he would also sometimes save games with his fearless resurrections. Kelix often goes for resurrections that most Mercy mains would not dare to, and sometimes this pays off for the team in a big way. I would expect Kelix to perform at the same level as he did in Season 1 and be a pretty decent support going into Season 2. Now, Alamo is an interesting addition to the team. While Alamo is somewhat untested against top-tier players, he has been rumored to be one of the best Lucios in the world. While I'm not sure if he will start over Kelix, if he can prove his worth for the team, he could potentially be a great addition, but this is one that we are going to have to wait to see. In terms of tank players, the Uprising has done nothing but upgraded. Throughout the offseason, Boston has opted to keep their 2 tank players, Note and Gamsu. Note and Gamsu were a great tank duo last year, and I expect them to perform at the same level this year. In addition, the team has added Axiom, another main tank from their Academy team, and Fusions, a 2-way player between Uprising Academy and Boston Uprising. Both of these players are good main tanks, and Fusions in particular had a breakout performance during the World Cup in 2018. With that being said, as long as Gamsu is still on the roster, I expect him to start over any of the other main tank players that were added this year. Out of all the player categories, DPS is where Boston switched it up the most this offseason. First, Boston decided to get rid of their DPS player Mistakes. Many people have debated whether or not this was a good move, but I completely agree with them letting go of Mistakes. Mistakes was really an average player at best and was not very consistent most of the time. People often say they feel bad for him because he had to unexpectedly learn so many new hero roles, but while I do have sympathy for him, I believe players' value is increased quite a bit if they are able to play multiple heroes, as in Overwatch the meta is always changing and you really have to learn how to adapt to that, and Mistakes just didn't do an amazing job at doing that. Even when Mistakes played Tracer, which was his main, he still wasn't anything amazing, and I think it was really smart of Boston to get rid of him before Season 2. Flexibility in hero picks seems to be something that is kind of important for Boston as they move into Season 2, seeing as both of their new DPS players can play many roles and are often interchangeable. One trade that will probably sting for the Uprising was the trade of Striker to the San Francisco Shock. Striker was a breakout player during Season 1, with the potential of playing just about whatever hero you needed him to play. He was an outstanding Tracer, Junkrat, and Widow, and could outplay his opponents on most DPS roles. He was a large reason for Boston's success in Season 1, and it's unfortunate that they could not keep him for Season 2. With that being said, Boston has added 2 new DPS players, Blase from the Gladiators Legion NA Contenders team, and Colorhex from the Sydney Drop Bears in Australian Contenders. Both of these players are extremely flexible and have a lot of hero overlap, which makes them be able to play a lot of team comps that they may have struggled with in the past season. And while neither of these players may be as top tier as Striker was in Season 1, they do both speak fluent English, which is very positive for the team. This seems to be something the entire team is moving towards, as every player on the team is now a fluent English speaker. And while I haven't had the chance of hearing Colorhex's comms, I have heard Blase's, and he is very active in team comms and will make a great addition to the team for that reason. If you have not been keeping up with the news, it is worth mentioning that Colorhex is suspended for the first 2 games of the season due to account boosting, for most likely account boosting before he was a part of the Boston Uprising. Now, I would be very surprised if Boston didn't sign a 3rd DPS before the season starts, seeing what happened in the prior season with Dreamcasper. As for what other DPS Boston would sign, I'm not sure. It most likely would be an unknown player, as Boston is known for signing players that are not necessarily in the spotlight. With all of that being said, I do believe Boston will be able to be a contender for the playoffs this year again. I would assume that towards the beginning of the season, they will struggle and kind of be a mid-tier team and move up later on as they strengthen their synergy with their new players. A lot of these players need developing, but once they are developed a little more, they have a chance at being a great team. One of their biggest strengths this year will be the fact that they can communicate, as they have moved towards a roster that fully speaks fluent English. The team also is significantly more flexible than last season, with their 2 DPS players being able to play just about every hero. There has been a lot of doubt towards Boston so far this year, but I do believe they are being slightly underestimated, but we'll have to wait and see for a final verdict. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. Want more videos like this one? Subscribe to Buff Cheese. And as always, thanks for watching.